We begin as usual with the invocation composed by Nagarjuna to the Supremely Enlightened One. Anirodhamanutpadamanuchedamashashvatam anekarthamananarthamanagamamamirgamam yah pratitya samutpadam prapanchopashamam shivam deshayamasa sambuddhastam vande vadatam varam. Thank you all for coming to this very interesting session about trauma today. We have a very special guest and a wonderful program. You will come away with a lot of learnings, a lot of experience. I would like to introduce Elisabeth Carlucci to you. And you'll see her here next to us. I will just give a small introduction and then I will hand over to her without further ado. Elisabeth has a fantastic, very diverse spiritual background, combining Eastern spirituality with psychology and psychotherapy. She comes from Zen Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, also Ashtanga Yoga, which is based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, most of you. She has experience also with Bhakti Yoga, with Tantra, Advaita Vedanta, and then interestingly also shamanic and Western esoteric and psychological systems. So an incredibly vast range of experience. Today, she works in one-to-one sessions with clients, so with people who have experienced trauma in their life. She also works with groups, dynamic sessions. I'm sure she will speak a little more about that later. For example, family constellations, systemic therapy, trauma therapy, life coaching, and also, very important, women's work based on mindfulness, meditation, and yogic practices. Without further ado, you see that she has an amazing experience and background. I hand over to you, Elisabeth. The floor is yours. Please enlighten us.
Namaste, Savamangalam. Thank you so much, Acharyaji. I feel a little bit humbled when you introduce me like that. It sounds like, whoa. In reality, it's just life being lived. And as you know, we accumulate experiences in that journey. So yeah, I'm very honored that you have invited me here. And I'm very honored to share with all of you. And I hope that it may be to your benefit and that it might guide you to look a little bit deeper into your own heart and your own soul. So yeah, that's my intention. And I just thought to start, let's just make a small meditation, and I will guide you. So if you want to choose a comfortable sitting position, you can, of course, also lie if you feel more comfortable that way, sitting on a chair, whatever suits you. And you're invited to either close your eyes or just have a very soft gaze for the case that you want to leave your eyes open. And just check in for a moment. How are you right now? What is present right now within your system? Can you feel your heartbeat? How's your breathing? And just connect with your sitting bones and the pillow you're sitting on or the chair you're sitting on to really ground yourself and connect to the earth. And just let your breath permeate every cell of your body. Let those inhales come and penetrate your whole system. You're inhaling through your crown, and you're exhaling through your feet or your sitting bones, whatever connects you to the earth right now. And just really feel how that breath is moving through your system, touching each and every cell of your body, and relaxing every little bit of your body. With every exhalation, you're relaxing more and more, and you're sinking deeper and deeper inside of your body. Really allow yourself to live in your body. Your body is safe. It's a very safe place to be. You're safe and you're connected with your feet to the earth. And Mother Earth is carrying you. Your body is your home. You can really feel that and allow it to sink more and more into your body, and let your presence drop from your head deep down into your body. The awareness goes down and down and down and down. And your body is completely relaxed, and you're so at ease in your body. And just with this presence, with this sacred presence that you're bringing to your body, you're just filling your system with love. With every breath, you're inhaling and exhaling love into your body. And especially to those places that maybe you're judging, or maybe you have a difficult relationship with, maybe they hurt, maybe they're not as perfect as you would like them to be. Especially send love and presence to those places, allowing them to just be however they are right now. Really sit in your body, embodying your body, filling your body with your beautiful and unique presence. So unique, your presence. Really feel that. How unique my fragrance, my energy is. There's no one else on this earth like me. And really radiate that presence out of every cell of your body. And just really feel how you're claiming a space on earth, literally with your body. You have a place here. This is your place. And it has been given to you and is your birthright to claim that space with your unique energy. From now on, I will love myself fully. all these parts that I might judge, that might not be seen. I love all of them. From now on, I will promise to give presence to each place in my body. I'm an adult. I'm a mature human. And I claim my space because it has been given to me. And really notice how your presence and your love is radiating in your body and around your body. This is your energy, your unique expression. And enjoy that. Enjoy your fragrance. Just for a few moments, let your breath continue to penetrate every cell of your body. Just feel that connection that you are between earth and heaven. And this uniqueness that you're embodying. In a very pure way, experience your own expression, your own flowering. Your own sacredness. And perceive how the air is touching your skin, the contact of your clothes with your body, the contact with the earth or with the chair you're sitting on. And maintaining that connection to your essence, to your presence. We are going to go into this session. And just even while we're talking and triggering maybe more your intellect, try to stay connected to your body and see how certain words maybe resonate in your system. And just be curious. Oh, that's what's happening right now. Interesting. Let's just meet in this space of curiosity and openness.
Thank you so much for this introductory meditation, accepting our bodies and our presence. Elisabeth, you are an expert in this field. You are a spiritual practitioner yourself. You have connected with many goddesses and other forms of the divine. But today we want to start by asking you, what is trauma and what causes trauma? Could you explain this to us a little bit in a way that lay people can understand it, people who haven't had your level of education or training in this field?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy to make it accessible for everyone. I think that's the most important about this. So, first of all, to start, I want to bring like a provocative statement in. Maybe it might be provocative for some of us. It's also just a hypothesis, so you can take it or not, but it's an invitation. What I want to say is that we're all traumatized. And this might cause, you can observe yourself. Oh, what does this cause in me? Is it like, oh, no, 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 or whatever it causes in you, just let it be there. It's just an invitation. And that's kind of the foundation on which I want to have this conversation today. So it's an invitation for all of us to look actually inside of us. So I don't want to talk about something that's very abstract and theoretical and just out there, but something that is in all of us, and it should be an invitation for us to just look a little bit deeper than we're actually looking. So I want to depathologize also trauma. Obviously, we do have psychiatric diseases like post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you want to see so, most of the psychiatric and psychological diseases are based on trauma. But I just want to put that a little bit on the side. So if you have an issue in that way, it's of course still very helpful what we're talking about, but just really to bring it more to the common people, to the in the middle of society, because that's what trauma is. It is something that is affecting all of us. Why? Because trauma is something that happens on an individual level, as we can imagine, but also whole systems can be traumatized. And that's what we're experiencing. We're growing up in traumatized nations, in traumatized family systems, in traumatized organizations, school systems, companies. So it's really everywhere. And this is also not something very esoteric or even psychotherapeutical, because if we look at the history of mankind, it's just obvious. We come from war, we come from colonization, we come from killing each other, from all kind of things, and that's we're the product of that. Because as we all know, and I mean, I think it's so amazing that you're all spiritual practitioners, so I can actually speak from my heart. We all know that we're all connected with each other, and even the people that have deceased are still connected with us, and especially if we haven't like solved things, if we haven't worked through the traumas, and our ancestors as a collective have not done that yet. Individuals, of course, our systems are just very traumatized. So that's just as a basic. And then generally you can say that trauma is something, it's an event, or it's like a long-term something that happens on the long run, but it's definitely something that is too much for us. We cannot deal with it in that moment. And that is very, very individual. So it's not only rape, war, things that are too much for all of us, but maybe something hits me in a moment where I don't have the resources. Maybe it comes on top of something, or maybe I have a particular weakness somewhere. And so that is traumatizing maybe for someone, and for someone else, it's not. So it's a very, very individual thing. So that's very important to understand trauma. We cannot judge anyone. Our experience is always valid and what happened to us. And so we have, just to bring in a little bit of the theory, we have a few types of trauma. For example, what we all know probably is shock trauma. That's what we call as a society most of the time as trauma, rape, violence, war, or sometimes even just saving a policeman, saving someone in a very difficult situation could be also shock trauma for that person. Then we have developmental and relationship trauma, which is a little bit more the direction that I'm kind of going to, because shock trauma we know. So developmental and relationship trauma is something that happens over a long period of time. And it might come from systems that are traumatized and that act traumatized. And so we learn to adapt. We learn to adapt to that system, and it's genius. So trauma is also not something that is bad. It's very natural. It's a very great thing of the body, actually. It's survival strategy. So we're learning to adapt to a dysfunctional system, and that expresses then in the individual as trauma. And then as a third option, you have like transgenerational trauma, which I've been hinting also to a little bit. We don't go in the depth of that. And that can be, we even have nowadays a science, many of you might know, epigenetics. So it has even come into science. It's the state of art of psychotherapy, I would say, epigenetics. And there we know that transgenerational trauma is really transmitted not only through social behavior, but it can be dormant in the genes and can be activated if there's a trigger. So I could have a reaction to something because they knew about transgenerational trauma a lot because of the Holocaust. So many of the victims of the Holocaust went to the US, and that's where it started. And then even 2 generations after, they would find similar reactions in the kids of the people from the Holocaust. So that's how it started, that they realized, oh, there's something going on, you know? Oh, I feel like I'm getting burned just with something, or like it's very, I get even goosebumps if I say it now. It's a very interesting subject. So yeah, these are the types of trauma and what causes trauma. And what I also want to point to is the effects that it can have. So it can, of course, express in the mind, and I'll say a little bit about some possible symptoms. There's, of course, a vast array, but just so we get an idea. But also, I think what is important is that it's a question of the nervous system. So the nervous system is affected by trauma, and that's where it gets really interesting, because we have realized that just normal talking therapy does not help with trauma, or maybe to a certain point, because it's really the nervous system. And as when trauma happens, there's a fragmentation happening to us, not only between body, mind, and emotions, but also within the brain. And we cannot have words. Trauma has no words. Like when we say we're speechless, that's where it's coming from, when something is happening and it's just leaving us speechless, because there are no words. So we cannot really work through trauma in the beginning just through the neocortex, through the talking, because it actually sits more in the lower areas of the brain, in the amygdala, in the brainstem. And that's why we need to address the nervous system. And then when things come up into the conscious, then we can talk about them, obviously, and we need to integrate them. But it's very important to have so that's what we call somatic, like soma is the body, to have like physical exercises and physical kind of therapies that involve the body, because this fragmentation that I just pointed to also happens within us. So many times we can be people that are very smart and very rational and very good thinkers. They might be actually traumatized because there's all the energy is in the mind and not in the body and the emotions. So they might be disconnected from the body, from the somatic experience, and from the emotional experience, because it's not safe. So there's nothing wrong about that too. I don't want to judge that at all. And a lot of the great things in the world have actually come from traumatized people. And we know that Albert Einstein, for example, was autism spectrum. So a lot of this, there's nothing bad about that. Trauma, there's nothing also wrong about trauma, really. It's just like if as we are all spiritual practitioners and we're moving towards becoming whole and towards becoming at peace and at ease and into oneness, we will encounter all these things. Because if we're, for example, just in the rational mind and disconnected from emotions and the body, we will encounter problems in life and maybe illnesses. So that's another thing, how it can express. Physical illnesses can be also oftentimes related to trauma. Trauma also expresses a lot in contact, especially relationship and developmental trauma. So it can come out, be that we want to be either very close, like merger type relationship, or keep our distance. So fear of intimacy, or both, either very close or distant, like this teeter-totter. And that's how it can, for example, also express. Or very busy people. If we're very busy, always need to keep ourselves busy, and very prone to stress, maybe hard to decompress. That's when because the nervous system is agitated. So it's hard. We can actually never come really to a 0 point. Like the parasympathetic nervous system is not really working there. So people that are hard to move from stress to relaxation, very busy minds are actually also connected to trauma. Yeah, there's just such a vast array. It's incredible, and it's hard to point to it all. But I think we can all find ourselves somewhere. Overly talking, for example, very fast talking. Pride is also pride and shame are kind of married. So either we feel shame or we compensate with pride, these kind of things. Or, of course, any abuse of drugs or of food, or all these things can be symptoms of trauma. If we're easily in the victim mode, for example, or also just not being connected to the whole, to be honest. That's where I can bring it back to all of us also. Like this disconnect that we're actually trying to work through our practice and really embody oneness, not just as a concept. That is trauma, because our reality is we are all connected. This is not a esoteric, spiritual, out there idea. This is the truth of our being. And this disconnect, this is the fragmentation. That is also a symptom of trauma.
Wow, this is fantastic. And I feel we should have more sessions about this, because you've opened like Pandora's box in a way. I would like to ask the next question, but I can openly say that what you described, I can see myself in a couple of things you said. The funny thing in my case is I'm a spiritually traumatized person because I grew up only with spiritual people. So that was a joke, but it's also true. So, but now the next question is, now you've spoken in a way, someone who is looking at it from psychology and psychotherapy, and in a way you spoke about the body and the nervous system. When we use the word spirituality, we think of the spirit, the mind, or consciousness. How does trauma connect with spirituality, or how does spirituality become a solution, one solution approach to trauma? Could you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, I mean, I could also say it the other way, like how does spirituality maybe also an escape strategy from trauma, just to provoke again a little bit. Sorry, I used to have I had a cough last week, so I sometimes still have a little bit, so I apologize. Yeah, it's very deep, so I want to start there. So some of us really move to spirituality and might have a talent, like a magical talent to meditate. I can just speak from myself. I started also very young on the spiritual path, and I was a great meditator. Everyone was like, what? And no one could like help me. And I was like, I developed a pride, or even that what a great meditator I am. And until at some point life gave me some nice lessons. I was like, bam, bam, you think you're a good meditator? Yeah. And I started to see that I was actually dissociating in a certain way, you know. It was what you call maybe spiritual bypassing. So I went easily into like meditative state. My upper chakras, to speak spiritual language now, were open, quite open, but the lower chakras were the problem. And so that was a very interesting journey for me, because it was an invitation by life to actually explore the lower chakras. And actually, I think now that would be I would pass over to the next question here. So I kind of make a point there, and I'll get back to that later. So one thing is that in the spiritual world, we can find many people that have actually experienced trauma and are kind of escaping the world, because it's a very hard world. I mean, we all know that. It's not so easy to deal with. There's nothing wrong about that too. I'm not talking from a judgmental point. I'm just talking to share what I mean. We all know that this traumatized world that we're living in is not the beautiful place that we were hoping it would be. And the harsh reality of life is just also inviting us to obviously go to a spiritual place, which is our home too. So there's nothing wrong about it. But the knack is that we need to face it. We are born as humans and we have to face it. And even to go to the upper chakras, we have to go to the lower ones. We have to open the lower chakras in order for the Kundalini energy to move up. So that's the thing, that trauma blocks the Kundalini energy. And for me, actually, with my Kundalini awakening, that's when it all came out, actually, from up to down, from down to up, like when it all started, when I needed to start to face these things. So trauma blocks the Kundalini, and yeah, it makes us maybe not want to be human and to be embodied. And it's really an invitation, and I think real spirituality on a very deep level. And I think as a collective, we're actually just starting to move there. It's really about embodiment, embracing being human and all of our pains and all of our shadows and all of the things that we judge about ourselves that we don't like, because we often idealize spirituality. And these are also the teachings, how we should be, the yamas and niyamas in the Hindu world. In the Christian, we also have the how we should be. I don't know now the name for it in English, but that's very common in spirituality, and that's great. It's a guideline for us. We need that. And at the same time, we can also bypass actually our shadow, because there's no one helping us and taking our hand to really look there. And that's where actually the divine feminine comes in for me. And that's where I actually started to actually really work with Tantra and with the divine feminine. And so I think the development that I'm talking about and this tendency to go to the upper chakras is really related to this worldwide patriarchal movement that we come out of. And because patriarchy goes to the higher chakras, God is up there somewhere, and Earth is dirty. That's why we have been destroying Earth, and everything, it's out there. So this tendency comes, in my opinion, from there. And when I started to embrace the divine feminine, which is, I mean, you know, the Mahavidyas, or like all the shit of humanity is being embraced in Tantra, in the divine feminine. We're allowed to actually look at our shadow because it's part of the path, because a lot of energy is being held there. That's the thing. Like when we don't look at our traumas, we're missing a lot of energy. A lot of our spiritual energy is encaged in the trauma, in those patterns. And when we start to look at our shadow and say, yes, I'm prideful. Yes, I'm judgmental. Yes, I'm doing all these things, and I have a shadow, and I'm a human. Then suddenly that energy can start to release. So that's also part of the healing, and that's where then real awareness and mindfulness comes in, when we actually stay present with all these parts of us and don't need to fragment anymore to something, to an ideal of ourselves, but really saying yes to these, also to the dirt of us, because we are humans. We have this, can call it the compost of our emotions, of our darkness, but that's really where the beauty, that's the lotus flower is a great example. It grows in the mud. So that's the lower chakras, no? It's the mud. And then it goes up exactly to the crown. But we need the mud and we need to embrace it. So yeah, I just want to encourage, because for me, it was just exactly like that. So when I started to look at that stuff, it was at a certain point when I had meditated enough and done enough practice to be actually very stable, and my nervous system was ready to start to embrace, because that's also something we cannot force trauma to come up. It will come when the time is ready, when we're settled, when our body can actually deal with it. And when it was ready for me and all these things started to come up, I was actually ready to face my own shadow. So in the end, it's what we would call shadow work. And and to really look, oh, I'm not this only pure divine being that I had the idea before I was. And then all our pride automatically starts to reduce, and really this humbleness and real compassion comes in. Because you might say, I've always been a compassionate being. I've been a vegetarian from young age. I always saved animals everywhere. I was very empathetic. I was exactly an empath, even like feeling others more than myself. And real compassion comes when we start to actually see that all the stuff out there that we judge so easily is actually inside of us. And then we stop judging. Then we start to actually feel one, because we are, and to not point a finger anymore that trauma is somewhere out there, but it's inside of us. So for me, the part of healing trauma is actually a very deep spiritual journey, and it is part of our system. And sometimes I have to also say it's a little bit neglected in the systems that I have encountered, because maybe they come from times where things were more pure or more easy. And nowadays we have just collected a lot of stuff. And that guidance I found then really more in the psychotherapeutical realm, and not so much with my spiritual teachers, interestingly enough, and in the feminine work with the divine feminine. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's really wonderful. And as you all know, I have the tendency of mansplaining, which is a man trying to explain what the speaker just said. I don't want to do that, but Elisabeth, am I right in understanding, summarizing, that sometimes spirituality can be a kind of escape from traumas, and that is actually problematic, because the purpose, or the true purpose of spirituality, would be to work on the traumas and to work in healing and dissolving traumas, and then going into the deeper realms of our nature. That is somehow what I understood. The second point you made about the divine feminine, most of the practitioners here have been acquainted with, for example, Tara, the goddess Tara, or from the Hindu backgrounds, we have Devi, the Divine Mother. Some practitioners here even know Kamakhya Devi, where you have also been. So most of the people here are acquainted with the notion of the Divine Feminine, the goddess. Here, I want to sort of ask a critical question, not a devil's advocate, but a critical question, because I myself grew up with the goddess, the Divine Mother. Can that not also sometimes be a little infantilizing? Where, let's say I have mother issues, as an example, let's say I have mother issues, and then we are living in a patriarchal society, as you said, and then there is the great Divine Mother, and in Hindi we say Hamari Ma, our mother, and there is this infantilizing thing that I want to remain a child. I'm her child. I'm not an adult. Could you say something about this? Though we didn't plan this as a question, but could you say something about this, please?
Yeah, I guess there's definitely, the most popular goddess in India is Lakshmi, right? Of course. And she's great. No, don't get me wrong. But yeah, spirituality always depends on the approach, no? And who is your teacher, and who is introducing you, and are you meeting? That's why ideally we have a guru who is a realized guru, because he can see beyond our own conditionings. Because when we meet spirituality with our own conditionings, obviously we will not go above our own conditionings. The practice, of course, helps us and might help us to slowly broaden our horizon. But of course, if I'm looking for being protected, and then I will, of course, see that in the Divine Feminine too, obviously, because that's how I go into the world. The way we connect with spirituality is the way we connect with our world. So sure. And there's a tendency, especially all those goddesses are very popular. And for example, the Dumavati or Chinnamasta or something is somewhere in the background. And it's also feared by many. I'm also doing women's work. And when we work with Kali, it's like, oh, there's a fear, like, wow. And that's okay, you know, I'm also not judging that, but because we haven't faced those parts in ourselves. So we go maybe somewhere, and that is spiritual bypassing, actually. That is an example of spiritual bypassing that you're bringing in, or in the Christian tradition, to Maria, Mother Maria. And again, she's beautiful energy. I'm not judging that. We need that too. But we're kind of bypassing and not looking at the other side oftentimes. So we need both of them. And yeah, definitely that's a case of spiritual bypassing, I think, that you're describing. And also, that's also okay, because it depends what you want. Do you really want to awaken, or are you looking for some more comfort in life? And that's absolutely fine. No, we can all choose. There's nothing wrong of just wanting some more comfort and having a connection to Devi and Lakshmi, and praying for more money and praying for wealth. There's nothing wrong with all these things, no? I mean, we're completely free to choose what we want. But I'm just talking now from a point where maybe some of you feel the pull of really awakening, no? That's why we're having this conversation from my side, because I have that pull. Like, I'm ready to do anything I really want to. I just long, my heart is just bursting out for awakening, and I'm ready to face the challenges. And that comes also with challenges. So it's not only being in the arms of the mother. The mother can help you, of course, sometimes when you're going through a lot of stuff, it can help you to hold you, but it's really also not always comfortable. And if we look at our world and where we are, and then see the divine path as an inner path of that, it's obvious that it won't be so comfortable also.
Wonderful. So while I come to the last question, I encourage everyone to ask their questions. Maybe if you like, you can write them in the chat so it is easier to pick them up. Please go ahead. So the last question would be sort of the most practical. And of course, we will share your email with everybody. I'm putting it here in the chat. Some of you have already asked prior to the session, can you get in touch with Elisabeth directly? This is her email. Please do get in touch if you feel that there are traumas that you could work on spiritually with someone, confidentially, and so on. The last question, Elisabeth, would be, so now we've described trauma, we've described the role of spirituality, both positive and maybe sometimes the bypassing, which is dangerous. So now the question is, how can we actually heal trauma through spiritual processes? And can you point us to some of the, in your experience, best approaches and the effects and actual benefits of healing trauma, like on the very practical side? If I'm traumatized, I come to you, I say, could you help me?
Yeah, well, that's of course very individual, like the example that you just brought in, if I'm traumatized, and so it's very generalized. So I will just also generally respond, because it is very individual, and it depends where I'm coming from and where I stand and what exactly has happened for me personally. But and also I decided, like when I was thinking about this, not to really make advertisement for certain approaches, you know, that have certain labels. So I will just talk generally the direction that we kind of need to look at, and that's maybe what is most beneficial to you anyway. Otherwise, the rest you can Google also. So it's about somatic experiences. So it's about coming into the body is one of the main things. And it's very subtle, because I have also always been an embodied person. So it's very interesting. You have some people that are really not feeling the body, are really experiencing a numbness. That is a very more developed degree of trauma. But it's really also about, am I really every moment feeling the sensations of the body? Am I really resonating? Like when I hear, that's why I invited you in the beginning. If I say something, do you feel the resonance in your body, or is it just touching your mind? Because we are humans, we are beings that are hypersensitive. Our nervous system, when it's balanced, is extremely sensitive. We perceive so many things and we feel it in the body. So it's really embodied therapies that help. So, for example, family constellations, but with someone who is specialized in trauma. So it's very important, all the things that I also mentioned, to have some, because like you said, you can also, even spiritual approaches, you can bypass, and you have that in everything. So it's very important to have someone who is kind of, who knows that. So anything that helps you to get embodied, that can be even walking, not very strong sports, because that's another facet of trauma, very strong willpower, overly willpowered, goal-oriented. So we don't want to go there if you have that tendency. Light movement, walking, light swimmings. If you have the tendency, if you notice again, oh, it's coming, the ambition, calming it down, but movement is important. So you're starting to ventilate the system. So you're, and also observing, obviously, that you're present while you're doing that, not thinking, having a story and the body is doing something else at the same time. Then obviously also asana, but I bring in the same thing with the right guidance, because we have a lot of asana nowadays that is actually pushing and that is different. So really trauma-informed asana, really learning to stay in the postures, really learning to stay in the body and having the breathing connect. Pranayama obviously is working on the nervous system, also in the right guidance. Then also to work with the divine feminine, especially for women, but actually also men. Womb awakening work for women, and for men, it's the hara. Like going down there, connecting to the womb of creation. We all come from a womb. It's incredible. Like it's really the feminine work. It's important for everyone on the planet because there's an imbalance in all of us. As we can see historically, it's just very obvious. And also sexuality. Real intimacy, not only goal-oriented sexuality, like tantric sexuality, where we're actually opening our heart, we're very intimate, we're present, but we're in the body. So not, and we can observe that in ourselves. How do I have actually sex? Sex is a huge reflection of trauma too, of ourself. It's like a mirror, no? Am I goal-oriented? Am I dissociated? Or am I really in the body? So that's a massive healing because you're practicing to be intimate but connected to yourself. So that's the next thing. Boundaries, working with boundaries, and being able to say no, practicing to say no, to stay connected to our needs. Do I really know what I need? Or is it just an idea? Am I always adjusting like this over empathetic way that is also very much a symptom of trauma? Dance therapy, art therapy, like all these embodied things. Generally, intimate relationship, I just recommend it. It's very hard, but it's a very good practice ground because all of our traumas will come out if we really allow intimacy. Also, if we don't keep the partner on an arm's length, and if we really allow it, it's amazing. Mindfulness, also allowing helplessness, to allow ourselves to say, I have no clue what's going on here. I don't know what's going on. And then the things will also come. Taking responsibility for all of our actions, for everything we will do, getting out of a victim mode, getting out of a blame mode, really for every little thing. And these are things that we can practice. Now it maybe sounds theoretical, but it's actually something we can really, really practice. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we have one question from the chat.
Yeah.
And we also had Devika. So Devika ji, she said she would like to actually ask it verbally. Devika ji, interestingly, she is a psychiatrist by profession. Mm-hmm. So this is highly interesting. Devika ji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dania. Thank you, Elisabeth ji and Acharyaji. I was typing and I thought, I just can't communicate what I wanted to ask. So my specialism is adult survivors of childhood trauma. So mainly abuse, really. That's what I mainly deal with. And I wanted to thank you for your honesty and openness. And because I've also wondered about spiritual bypass, both personally and observing as well. And also in therapy as well, that I feel often people come to therapy to escape things rather than actually face it. And I guess my question was that, because you often mention the word heal, and I've been wondering whether, and this is my view, so I'm just putting it out there, that maybe that when we enter spirituality or psychiatric treatment or therapy from a point of view of healing, then that seems to immediately say that there's something wrong with the individual that needs to be fixed. And as you said, I believe by the age of 30, everyone's had some trauma, pretty much. So I'm wondering whether we should come from a different approach and say, this is just part of life. Suffering is part of life, as is joy. And so just accept, as you said, if we accept ourselves as a whole, that includes having experienced some trauma, and then accepting ourselves and other people with the trauma and the effects of trauma, and going away from the medical model, which I've been trained in, which is there's something wrong, we need to fix it. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Wow, thank you so much. It's very deep and it's very important what you're bringing up. And I'm very honored that you're being a psychiatrist or asking me. So yeah, it is really deep, and I'm very grateful that you bring it up, because that's what these talks do. Though you focus on one direction and it goes into one direction. So I think even from a spiritual perspective, we need both. That's why we need Tantra and we need Advaita Vedanta. So we need to know that we're whole, that we're complete, that there's nothing to do. That's what Advaita Vedanta says. And there's nothing to do. Everything is perfect. We are already there, because it's true. But at the same time, that's where we can also bypass. There's a danger in that. At the same time, we need to see, I'm a human. I have certain things, and it's an opportunity. This is just an invitation. Obviously, we can be just happily living life, knowing that we're one, and there's also nothing wrong. But I think if we really want to move towards enlightenment or Buddhahood or whatever our goal is individually, we need both of those poles. This is the polarity of humanness that you're actually pointing to. And sometimes therapy can be only in fixing, can be only here. And sometimes spirituality can be only here, and both can become a problem for the individual. So it's so beautiful that you're pointing that out. And it's so hard to stay in the middle, to not overfix, to not always, like in therapy, you can go on and on and on and on, and everything's wrong. And that's maybe also a little bit in the victim thing. And what will I do with that? And blah, blah, blah. We need both. So we need to experience. That's why meditation I would only recommend a meditation combined with therapy and somatic approaches, because we need to experience that wholeness, because it's true. Everything is perfect. It's a human experience we're having, and that's part of it. And at the same time, if we really want to evolve, and also if we want to socially evolve, it's also helping the people around us socially. If we step into that, we also need to look at some things and say yes to them. So saying yes, that's another practice I would recommend. Actually, doesn't mean, this is great, but saying yes is, yes, this is here. Yes, I do have a thought now that is maybe not very pretty, or that is not very nice, but it's here. And by saying yes from a witnessing place, maybe, so at the same time you're witnessing and then you're seeing and feeling both. That's where also the fast healing happens, in my experience. And I'm sure, Devika, you have a lot of experience like that. But for me, when you have built a meditation practice and at the same time you have the emotions coming up, you have them flow through your body. Fear is coming. Okay, it comes and it goes. I'm not clinging to it. I'm not only here on this side, it's fear and it's terrible, I'm making a story out of it. But I have learned to witness the emotions can come through, the thoughts can come through, but I'm not denying them, So it's really both. And that's why it's so amazing to talk to you, because you're meditators. Because if we develop that tool together with that, the progress is so fast on the spiritual path and also psychologically. Does that answer your question, Devika?
It does. That's amazing. Thank you. And I guess what I'm really taking away is not the clinging, not the aversion. That's
exactly, not the aversion and not the attachment. That's also what the teachings are all about. Because then we develop another thing, and that's the problem. We have aversion to our shadow. We don't want to feel fear. We don't want to feel anger. We don't want to feel all these things. Like, that's really generally, I think I can say that, but that's an aversion. And being a human really is allowing the whole spectrum of thoughts, of emotions, and not judging them. That's also what the divine feminine really is also about for me. but you need to practice both then, no? Like, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devika.
Thank you so much. And we're always honored that Devika-ji joins, because she actually develops programs within the NHS in the UK. So I'm just joking here. So through Devika-ji, we have an indirect influence on the NHS. This was a joke. This was a joke. You know, we should have at least some influence, right?
Acharyaji, sorry. I hope it does happen. I'm hoping it does happen.
Thank you. So we have 2 more questions. Only little time left. Perhaps the first one, the person whose name is iPhone has a question which they wanted to verbalize. Perhaps we can take the first question about how can an organization be traumatized, rather, because it's made up of individuals. So how is it possible that a whole organization or even a country can be traumatized? Elisabeth, could you say something about that quickly?
Yeah, just quickly, because it's a deeper thing too. And that's here we kind of touch and dock to systemic therapy and some of systemic theory, sorry. Some of you might know. So the system is the whole is more than the sum of the elements. That's what we say. So yes, it's absolutely true that organization is traumatized because the individuals are. A nation is traumatized because the individuals are. Yet there's something else. So let's make it a little bit simpler, a family system. So you have the family with traumatized individuals. Yes, so you can say the family system is traumatized, but there is something that organizes a system. So that's more than the sum of the element. There's a movement, there are rules that start to happen, and there are codes in a system, in a nation, in an organization. And if they come from traumatized individuals, they express trauma. So this is what is more than the sum of the elements. An organization that might not allow emotions, that's very typical, for example, in companies. Yes, we meet on a professional level, very professional, everything. So we're not bringing in our emotions, our private life. This is trauma, sorry, but it's not a holistic approach. We're all humans. So this is like a rule from traumatized individuals, and you create like the rules of the organization. And that's what I'm kind of pointing to. So organizations have rules, countries have laws. So it's not only the individuals, but it's the laws. There's always something more that's going on in a collective of individuals. And that expresses trauma as well. The school systems, I mean, most of you have experienced that yourself. We can also say that trauma is definitely sitting there. And that's more than just the teacher and the pupils, but how is the whole thing working? How is it organized? That's what I'm pointing to. I hope that answers your question just on a surface level.
Wonderful. Yes. And I mean, we can just think of, let's say an organization, let's say there has been some traumatic event, let us say something occurred in the past, and that continues as a memory, like a meme. It continues as a memory, and people come in who have nothing to do with that, but then become affected by that memory. So right in this way, we can also think of it, I think. Or we live in Switzerland, right? So Swiss people are totally traumatized by the idea that everything has to go according to time. So if you're 5 minutes late to an appointment with someone, they get really upset, which in a country like India or other countries, even England, is not as rigid, right? So that was a joke. Now we have the last question. I think, Yuka, in Japan, it's similar, right? So the Switzerland and Japan are always in competition, which trains are the most punctual. So now the last question from the person whose name is iPhone. That's a very vast name there. Would you like to unmute yourself and speak? Not sure the person is here. So the person who wrote, I have a basic comment, psychotherapy, spirituality in their core are the solution for helping.
Yes. Sorry, Acharyaji, yes, sorry, I wasn't sure. My name might not have appeared. I'm Gopal Krishna Hegde. Thank you. I know there is not much time, but in fact, I would rather stay with what I have learned and heard than adding more. Yes, I am a psychiatrist too and a psychotherapist. But let us not dominate with that idea, but we are here for spiritual discussion. I think I can't see them being different either, because despite being trained in Western psychotherapy, I think the drive is from Oriental, and that's why these things help me. Anyway, I wanted to just basically make a comment. As I said, this will be needing for more discussion, which is, if you look at the core of psychotherapy, let us say Melanie Klein, for example, who lost her son, became a very prominent psychoanalyst, said, dealing with sadness is the door to hope. So there is no getting away from dealing with difficulties. And so when we say we escape from something, etc., escape is part of the journey. So it's in and out. So there is nothing wrong, and it's a process. Same thing with spirituality. Acharyaji, I'm no way giving you any advice or anything out of just as a joke. I think, yes, I think, you bring us so much of wisdom, and they are not easy to face. So I suppose helping us to think about the small steps. In fact, I struggle with any kind of practice properly. So that is all a part of the journey to deal with that. So spirituality and psychotherapy to me, or healing itself, as you know, Elisabeth G, there is no getting away from healing process, which is a growth, and you need to deal with the trauma, any kind of healing. So they are inherent, I think, to have that facing them and escaping for a moment, but then bringing back to the focus with the help of the guru or the vidya. So to me, that is very difficult. So that's all I wanted to say, really. I know we have gone beyond time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Elisabeth, would you like to give the last words? And then we are just finished. We thank you all of you already. Please use what you learned. I think we will have some more sessions with you, Elisabeth, right? We will invite you again, maybe even for a retreat. So we offer all these retreats in the UK, elsewhere. Maybe we could have like an in-person with you. This is just a spontaneous idea, but please, Elisabeth, give your last words for today's session.
Okay. Well, it was such an honor and pleasure to meet all of you, and thank you, Acharyaji, for inviting me. And yeah, I hope it maybe opened some doors in you to just go deeper. In the end, it's also like you just said, Gopalji, this is all a big journey. There's nothing separate. Just for talking purpose, we need to pull out sometimes things so we can pull out, so we can point to it. No, it's all one, and we're all journeying together in this. And there's nothing wrong or right. We all have our own rhythm. But still, I hope that maybe I could support you or give a new impulse to look into a new direction somewhere in us, and we all inspire each other. So yeah, I'm very grateful and hope may this session be of benefit for all sentient beings.
Yes, indeed. May all be happy, may all be at peace, and may all of you have a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you so much, and see you soon for another special session. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.